Okay, so hello everybody. We're here today, or I'm here today, at Petticoat Creek Conservation Area. And this is just one of the areas where they have some kind of picnic tables and this kind of thing. And just thought to record a little talk for the internet. Today is a nice day, a nice summer day here in Canada, in Pickering. So thought that maybe could start off with a little bit of meditation, maybe just 5 minutes or so. So what we can do if you're at home watching this, or not in your car, but elsewhere, we can just look about 3 feet in front of us. We can also lean forward a bit and straighten our back. And then looking 3 feet in front of us, we can close our eyes. And we can focus in on the breath. Can know when it's coming in and know when it's going out. If we breathe in a long breath, can just know I'm breathing in a long breath. And if we breathe in a short breath, can just know I'm breathing in a short breath. And we can focus in on the breath at the tip of the nose. And when focusing in on the breath, don't want to put too much pressure, and also don't want to put too little. So we want our focus to be heavy enough that our mind doesn't run away to the past or the future, but we also want it to be light enough that our body doesn't get tense. So just the right amount of focus. And we can pose the question to ourselves, what would be a really comfortable way to breathe right now? And then just let the body respond on its own. And if our mind wanders away to the past or the future, we can just bring it back to the present moment, to the breath. We can make the breath our frame of reference. Any thoughts related to the breath, how to make it more peaceful, how to sustain our focus on it. If they're relevant to the meditation, then we can let those thoughts in. Other thoughts of the past or the future, what we should do tomorrow, what we did today, we can let those go. If they come up, we can just return to focusing on the breath. Okay, and can open your eyes and do a short reflection on the Dhamma. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Dutiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saranang gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saranang gacchāmi. So, nice to be here, and very peaceful night here at Petticoat Creek. Actually came out here, and there hasn't actually even been a single person who's walked by today. Kind of Thursday night, a little bit of oasis here in the city, and Lake Ontario is just off to the left, and then the city to the right. And so things are like this. We have these kind of, places, in the city, nice little parks, nice little forests that we can go to, that are calm, that put our minds at ease. And, in the same way, going through our life, we have these kind of times where, we'll be going through and everything seems to be going pretty well in our life. Everything seems to just be, okay, If a person's a lay person, all their finances might be in order, and their health is in good order, the people around them are in good order, and everything is good. Everything is going quite well. And this is a good thing. It's kind of a blessing. Of course, people strive for these things. These are the things that we want. People want good health. We want, if you're a monk, you don't have to worry about that, but people want their finances to be in order. Want their car to be running smoothly, not break down. And all these kind of things are things we have to consider. And so then when these things start to go well, when they start to become smooth, our efforts start to bear fruit. Maybe going to the gym and saving up money and all these kind of things, and the mortgage starts to get paid, and body starts to get healthy, and these things are good. And then these things start to bear fruit in a way that's very pleasant. So this is, of course, a nice thing, a thing to strive for, a thing to go for. And this is something that is good. It carries a kind of gratification, but it also carries a kind of danger with it. And so, of course, the question might be, what could the danger be about having good results come into our life, right? And of course, again, good to have these results. But one of the dangers that can happen is when we have these good results come into our life, then we can build up a sense of self around that. You know? So all the time when we strive for these things, we strive for them, strive to become healthy, have a good job, have a mortgage-free house, have all these things, and we strive for them, and the result comes, and then this result gets built into our personality, or gets built into our sense of who we are, right? So I'm a kind of person who has a healthy, body, you know. I can run so far, you know, I'm in good shape, you know, I can do things X, Y, and Z with my body. You know, I'm a person who has their finances in order, you know, who's always on top of their finances, you know. Or people are parents, then it can be, you know, I'm a good parent. My children, behave themselves. They're doing well in school. Or I'm a good, whatever it is, you know, good at my job, you know. And so this is the kind of gratification that comes from these things. When we put forth effort, we've done good deeds in the past, our mind inclines towards beneficial results. These results bear fruit. And then we tend to think these fruits are who I am. You know, I'm a person like this who has these fruits. And the danger in this kind of thing is that these fruits, these good fruits that come into our life, they're subject to change, you know. So actually they did a study, or I heard about a study a while ago, and probably other people have heard about this study too, where they did a study at Harvard of people who had won the lottery and people who got into a serious car crash that had a serious injury. And they studied them and did a follow-up maybe a year and a half after they'd won the lottery or had the car crash. And the people who won the lottery were less happy than the people who who had the car crash. And one of the reasons for this, of course, is that you win the lottery, you know, this kind of feeling of elation. Okay, now I'm this person who has this $1 million or 10 million or whatever it is. And then, of course, you know, you win the lottery, but you're not winning it every day. So that amount of money doesn't necessarily increase. And you start spending your money, and all of a sudden you're a person with only $8 million. And so you feel worse off. This kind of sense of who you are kind of feels like it's on the decline. And kind of life feels like it's on the decline. Kind of grabbing on to these pleasant fruits leads to this kind of feeling of despondency or despair when they fall away. And the opposite is also true. When a person gets into a car crash, you know, their sense of who they are takes a very bad hit. They were able to do all these things before with their body, you know, with their body that they can't do now. Can't maybe run, can't walk for a while, you know, can't lift weights for a while, whatever it is, can't swim. And then gradually over the course of a year and a half, maybe with some physiotherapy, then that starts to improve. So their life feels like it's on the mend, you know, and things are going up. And so happiness can be the result of that. Yeah? So this is one of the kind of paradoxes of the things that we strive for. You know, is that inherent in our gaining them is also this fear of losing them, and also this sense of loss when we fall from whatever peak position we were at. And this is something that's inevitably bound to happen. You know, our life doesn't just take a course where we keep gaining and gaining in abilities, gaining and gaining in power in our career, gaining and gaining in wealth indefinitely right up to the time we're 100, right? At a certain point, you know, maybe around 50, 60, our physical abilities start to decline. So if we have attached to the fruit of having a healthy body, then as our physical abilities start to decline, then we feel like that millionaire, you know, who once had 10 million, now 8, now 6, now 4, right? And, you know, we used to be able to run 10 kilometers, now 5. Then all of a sudden somebody's knee is hurt and cannot run, or somebody might feel they had a very kind of beautiful and appealing face, And past 30, past 40, wrinkles start to develop and their face starts to sag and people, excuse me, start to treat them differently. And so they feel like they're losing this sense of who they were, what they had. And similarly with people's jobs and their careers, people's careers rise on a trajectory, and some people, even if their career rises indefinitely, they become a top CEO of some very rich institution, the time comes when their abilities decline and they have to retire, have to let go of their position as a top CEO. And so the Buddha teaches us that that there are these things, there are these gratifications that come from the things we strive for in life. It's not the case that everything is just some, terrible rough slog. There is this happiness, there is this kind of joy that comes when we get these things that we wanted. But there's also this danger in them, in that we're subject to losing them. And right here is where we have a lot of the, a lot of sorrow in people's lives can come from just this. Living in an extremely affluent country like Canada is now, or many other countries in the world with a lot of material security, a lot of wealth, and there can be a lot of depression, a lot of sadness, even in countries like this. Despite the fact, say maybe 90, 100 years ago, Canada was extremely poor. Take somebody from that time and transport them 100 years in the future, they would be, completely blown away by what the average person enjoys here. So the Buddha teaches us about this gratification, he teaches us about this danger, but he also teaches us about this escape. And the escape from these things is to learn to develop dispassion towards the very things that we want to strive for. And so this is a kind of a tricky thing, because some of these things we really need. Right? I mean, there is no escape from the fact that if a person is a lay person, they have to use money, they have to have a roof over their head, they have to have food, everybody does. All these various things that we have to deal with. But the tricky thing is that when we take them as an end in themselves, something we're striving for, and that when we get, this will be a place of safety, that's when we suffer, when we lose it. But if we take them instead of being an end in themselves, we take them as a means. Like, what are we using these things for? What's the purpose of having these things? And the means of those things is to move forward in our practice of the Dhamma, to move forward in our practice for the Buddhist path to the end of suffering. So when we take these things as means instead of ends, then we learn to use them for the sake of developing dispassion, developing a sense of detachment, trying to cut our craving for almost everything. So we're basically everything at the end, which is why the Buddha teaches us, we eat food, but monks, they learn to contemplate what they call the loathsomeness of food before eating, kind of imagining what the food looks like, 10 days later, what it looks like after it's chewed, what it looks like in your stomach. Learning to contemplate these things to separate the craving for the food, the desire for the food that's necessary to sustain our life, from the craving for the food, the desire for the food that's just about the taste, just about wallowing in this pleasure. Because this is the kind of desire that leads to a lot of suffering when we don't get what we want. And the same thing for shelter, for a roof over our head. It's for the purpose of warding off cold, for the purpose of warding off heat, for the purpose of maintaining our life, for the sake of practicing the Dhamma. And the same thing with clothing. The clothes that monks use is also for this sake, just for the sake of warding off flies, mosquitoes, warding off the touch of wind, of biting things, so that we can practice for the Dhamma. And so we learn to turn our minds to these things, thinking about the very things that we think give us a lot of pleasure. We learn to turn our minds on our bodies and learn to see the unattractive aspects of all bodies. What does the body look like inside? What do a person's physical organs look like? We can get so obsessed with people's hair or, the people's skin, but if we see hair or skin in a bathtub, left over, it's something very disgusting, Or you see kind of hair on the barbershop floor, something very disgusting. Also, kind of hair can be, very smelly. It's not pleasant. Same with, a body. If it's not washed for 4 or 5 days, then it smells just terrible. And yet, these are the things that our mind launches out to, that wants to make ourself. They're the things that cause us to suffer when they change. Things that cause us to suffer when we lose them. Same with the skills we might have. We think I'm a person who can get X, Y, and Z done. Now, these skills are also based on causes and conditions. They're based on things we can do with our body, things we can do with our mind. And so the Buddha has us turn our perception on these things. Wait a minute, my body isn't permanent. It's not going to last. This body is subject to death. I see this all around me. There will come a time when I'll lose my ability to have these skills, when I'll lose my ability to get these things done. And so reflecting in this way, our mind turns away. It turns from outwards to inwards, from things outside of ourselves that we latch onto, looking for a place of safety, looking for these pleasant results, to turns inwards to try to find a more secure refuge. And this is a step forward in learning to find an escape from the suffering and pain that we experience when we lose these things that we love, which is something inevitable. So this is one of the reasons that, can sound a bit negative, but actually it's meant to be a positive thing. Because there'd be no point to talking about how, things fade away and our bodies fade away if there was no escape from the suffering that comes from our body fading away, that comes from our job fading away, that comes from our health fading away, that comes from our friendships, from people in our life fading away. But because there is an escape from this pain, it's not something pessimistic. It's something we contemplate to try to find a safer refuge. So we learn to build that up. We learn to look for a refuge first in our own mind. Just sitting here and meditating, we learn to contemplate. We learn to develop concentration. We learn to develop a pleasure that comes with being alone, with just practicing meditation, where we may be at the foot of a tree, to finding what they call, to trying to learn to follow the Buddha's instructions, to find delight in an empty dwelling, find delight in trying to follow his instructions to practice concentration. But ultimately, these things have as their aim the complete cutting of our attachment to the very things that we think are ourselves, that we think we love, that we think will give us good things, but then turn around and cause us a lot of pain when we lose them. Learning to cut our attachments to our bodies, learning to cut our attachments to what we think are our skills, learning to cut our attachments to all the, these various people in our life who we think are ours and we own them. Doesn't mean we never talk to people, but we learn again to to interact appropriately, interact for the sake of the Dhamma, interact for the sake of moving forward, which is what brings benefits both to ourselves and other people. And so ultimately these have these things as their aim, the complete cutting of our attachment to the very things that we think we love, the very things that we think will give us fruits that will last a lifetime. We learn to cut our attachment to our bodies, to our thoughts, to our mind, basically to everything there is, and to see what's left over after that. So in this way, the Buddha teaches us an escape. He teaches us an escape from the things that cause us to suffer. He teaches us an escape from the suffering of old age. He teaches us an escape from the suffering of death. He teaches us an escape from the suffering of loss of health, from the loss of life even. Teaches it an escape from all suffering. The tricky thing is that this kind of escape requires us to start to develop dispassion for some of the things that we really love. To learn to use them appropriately, to learn to use them in line with the Dhamma, for the sake of the Dhamma, for the sake of moving forward in the Buddha's teachings, for the sake of moving forward to the ending of suffering. So the paradox of this is that when we stop going out to consume these things, we find a kind of more happiness, more kind of happiness in our life. You know? We learn to less and less build up a sense of identity around our jobs, around our abilities, around the people in our life, and start to learn to build more and more sense of identity around the wholesome qualities we're trying to develop in our mind. You know, learn to build a sense of identity around, around the practice of meditation, around trying to move forward in our practice of concentration. And all this is for the sake of turning our mind to discernment, so that we can permanently cut our need for identities of any kind, learn to permanently cut our attachment to things of any kind. You know? Learn to try to find a permanent place of safety, a permanent end to suffering. This is the true benefit of the Buddhist teachings. It starts from, or we can learn to go from, recognizing, yes, there is a gratification to these things, these wonderful things that flower in my life. But there's also a danger to them. The danger that comes if I make them a part of myself, try to make them who I am, and then I suffer when they go. But there's also an escape. And that escape is to learn to use the good things that come into our life as a means, not as an end in themselves, as a means for moving forward in the Dhamma, as a means for moving forward in the Buddha's path, as a means to try to find a way to the end of suffering, which is his instruction to all of us. Okay, so I think I'll leave that for your reflection, and hope that everybody has a great day and a great week. Had a very nice summer here in Canada, still a nice summer, and it's been a nice day. So wishing you all the best until next time.